second, thank you. I completely forgot to start the recording. Cool. This is a second webinar in a three-part series. If you were here the first time, we covered a use case from a Glad Bank. Today, we're going to go into more details about the features that are really relevant in SciNote to manage inventories well. And the third webinar will happen in a few weeks, and we're going to have one of our customers here with us to also take us through a use case. We're going to start today with just lessons from the previous webinar to make sure that we are on the same page. Then we're going to tackle the challenges. So some of the challenges all of you mentioned previously, we're going to try to see if any new challenges came up. So there's going to be some polls. Then we're going to do feature walkthroughs. So what are some of the things SciNote can do? And we're going to map them to the challenges you mentioned. Finish off with key takeaways. So what we want you to take from this webinar besides seeing our features. And then we're going to open the stage for a Q&A session. And let's start. So a must-have always. So what SciNote is, who we are. So SciNote is #1 ELM plus inventory solution. We have been based on G2 reviews for 3 years in a row. We have customers all over the world, so around 110K and a bit more, and very different sectors from medical devices, biopharma to mining. And what we're very proud of is that we can also, and we do support FDA and USDA. One thing, whenever, so I'm sure all our customers are already aware of this, but everyone who is not. So we do have a security first ethos, and you can see some of our certifications. And we also have SOC 2 Type 2, which I don't think I added, but you should be aware of this, and some of our customers in the bottom right corner. Okay, so I'll continue with an overview of what we talked about last time. So just quickly, lab inventory managed evolution. As a reminder, it all started more in the 90s, in the 70s, where you still had paper logbooks and it was completely manual. One person was the designated person. Then the first generation LIMS came out. This was actually a very big step. The biggest issue there was they were very user-friendly and you required a fully fledged IT team. Then the PC revolution, suddenly we all had PCs. We knew how to use spreadsheets. So inventory management became more digitalized and used by different people and different users. And then in the 2000s and 2010s, we moved into the cloud-based systems, what also SciNote is, and these systems became more and more integrated. So this is what's starting to happen in the last 5 or 6 years in the 2020s, where it's inventory presents a big part of the digital ecosystem in the customers. So digital ecosystem, and also AI is, of course, a big thing in the last 2 years. I'll leave this slide on because it's my favorite from the previous webinar. So some of the meltdowns we heard, some of the meltdowns we found on internet. So I'm sure some of you can find yourself in one of these quotes. So inventory management is not an easy thing, and it does involve a lot of people using and inventories and systems and processes in the correct way. Okay, what we're gonna continue with, everyone. So we're gonna do a quick poll, same as the last time, because we want to compare the results, and I'm gonna show the results from the previous time afterwards, and also the results from today. The reason why, because usually it happens that at the second webinars, we get completely different results. So we want to see if this is true for inventories as well. So let us start the, okay, I think you should already see the poll on your screen. So you can fill out and choose multiple answers, and I'll leave it open for 20, 25 seconds so we see what your replies would be. So it is similar. Okay, so spreadsheets are leading the way again, and they're in the lead by a lot. LIM systems, okay. Dedicated inventory software. So this is interesting. Previously, I think we had only one person replying, or maybe even less. Maybe it was no one that they have a dedicated inventory system, mostly manual. The person who choose other, please share in the chat so that we know what other means. Okay, Google Sheets, cool. I'll leave it open for a few more seconds just to see if any other answers come. Okay, answers are still coming in, so I'll leave it open. But it does look like that spreadsheets in Excel are leading again. I'm gonna end the poll. Okay, Diana, I see Excel. Yeah, Excel spreadsheets. Let me end the poll and show the results with everyone. Yeah, as you can see, so spreadsheets in Excel, 60% almost, so 10 registrants, and then we have LIMS, not a lot, but ELN inventory modules, so something, I guess, like SciNote and dedicated inventory software. So this is interesting. As I said, nobody replied this last time, and mostly manual or paper is still a big one. Okay, let me show you the results for the previous time. Okay, so spreadsheets in Excel, I guess this is the most important thing. I mean, the most used one, how you all run inventories. LIMS was more common the last time, but as you can see, nobody last time replied that they are using a dedicated inventory software. So that's interesting. Okay, so the next poll we're going to open up is the one that will lead our webinar what we're going to be talking about in the next slides. And I'm going to show you the question. So what is your biggest inventory management challenge today? We're going to show you what the answers were last time, and then the entire webinar will be mapped to your answers. I'm going to open the floor for the poll again. I think you should already see it. So what we want to know is, again, we want to compare it to the previous. What is your biggest inventory management challenge today? You see there are a few options. So keeping inventories up to date, then linking inventory to experimental data, tracking usage and consumption. So I think this is similar to keeping inventories up to date. Okay. Answers are coming in, and it's mostly tracking usage and keeping inventories up to date. Meeting audit and compliance requirements. Okay, cool. We're going to touch that one as well. Again, if it's missing, please use the chat. Let's see what else we missed. Okay, tracking usage is leading the way again. Okay, interesting. Nobody has issues with sharing inventories across teams today. Okay, I'll leave it open for a few more seconds and see if any other answers. Okay, answers are still coming in actually, but the results are not changing. You all still mentioned that tracking usage is the one. Okay, I'll end the poll and share results. Okay, I think you should see the results currently. So as you can see, keeping inventories up to date is in the second place, but tracking usage and consumption leads the way with 43%. Some of you also have issues with linking inventory to experimental data, connecting the data with instruments and raw data, so inventories, and then meeting audit and compliance requirements together with misplaced or untracked items. Okay, let me stop sharing this and show the results from the previous time. So the results are very similar, except that last time we had a lot more people telling us that linking inventory to experimental data is also a big challenge. However, tracking usage, as you can see, and consumption is still leading the way. Okay, as I said earlier, the way this webinar will go, I'm gonna go through each of these that you see on the screen. So I'm gonna start with tracking usage and consumption, and I'll take you through features in SciNote, how you can set those up. Most of it is gonna be based off of examples from our customers and how they set those up. And let's dive in just a second. I need to move a few things. Okay. Good. Tracking usage and consumption. So we understand. So the questions we often hear are who used what, how much it was used, when it was used, was it restocked? So what's happening with all the samples, all the reagents, chemicals, equipment? So what's happening in terms of usage? What's happening in terms of consumption? So this is also something that we hear probably the most often in terms of inventories. And those are the questions that people are asking us. And let's dive into the features of SciNote and see how those things can be set up. Okay, the first thing. So for everyone who is using SciNote already today, this is going to be much more familiar. For the rest, I'm going to take you through what you see on the screen. So in our inventories in SciNote, and we talked about this in the previous webinar, you can set up stock. So stock allows you to track usage and consumption much easier. As you can see, you can set up different stock units. So everything from the common ones like grams, liters, You can also set up vials. You can also set up bags. So whatever is a unit of a stock that you're using, you can set it up. You can set up decimals, which allows you to track it more in detail. And also, more relevant, you can set up stock reminders. So low stock reminders can be set up, which allows you to then get, as you can see on the left side, notifications and warnings that indicate when you need to reorder something, right? So you can suddenly see much easier, okay, good. I'm running low on stock, it's being used. And if you're a lab operations manager, or so if you're managing a lab, this is probably a very important thing and you want to see this. So stock levels for each of the items. And this can be, as you can see on the screen, reagents, but it could also be buffers. It could also be strains, or you could be antibodies. So anything that you would need to track stock with, you can set it up. On the next slide, I'm going to go into more details. What I want to show is this automation that is actually running in the backend of SciNote. So if you use up, let's say in this case, you can see I use up 95 milliliters of this PBS, and in inventories, it was already automatically updated, and the low threshold notification and warning was triggered, and a specific person was notified, hey, we need to restock, we're running low. So this is something that's connected with the experimental part of SciNote and inventories. So stock management is talking between each other. So it's talking between experimental data and inventories. The next thing, okay, so what you see on the screen is consumption, right? All of this, so we use stock, you're using SciNote, and you used up and we're utilizing the stock management feature. And now what you can also do, you can export this stock consumption, and the export will look like as the screenshot on the right side. And what it allows you to do, so the use cases I've seen is, for example, procurement. Let's say you're working with you're a CRO, you're working with companies, and you want to also know how much you need to charge them, how much to invoice them. Now you can go through everything and see, okay, this is how much we used, this is what was used. And specifically, you can always go back and see what was used and how much was used in each of the experiments you were performing and executing. So also Excel at the end of the day allows you to look for trends and see if something is looking off.
Yeah, maybe I would just mention here, we have, a lot of testimonials from our customers that have seen basically based on this Excel sheet, some, trends of how they are consuming things, and they were, managing their forecast, their budget a lot more easily. And because of that, they obviously saved money and, also worked more efficiently. So they didn't overstock or, missing a reagent, for example, when they needed it in the inventory. I don't know if you will mention, but one thing that it's very important here, I think it's also that when you are using certain item, let's say a reagent, in the protocol, in the task, it's also important that you can create a snapshot, which will also, indicate what was what would be, let's say, the amount, whatever you would have in those columns, any kind of data at that specific time. So you can create a snapshot, or if a task is locked after that, it also creates the snapshot of all those items assigned to a task automatically. So I think that's very important as well to mention here.
No, I agree. I completely agree. And this is specifically, I think some of you also answered compliance and audit. This is also something that's important for you with inventories. This is where this comes in, right? If the auditor comes in, you have a snapshot of an item, how much it was used, and what was the specific state of it.
And let's say due date, right? That it's important that when, let's say a reagent until when it was still, usable.
Expiration date.
Expiration date, exactly, yeah.
No, I agree. This is something great. Thank you. Again, don't forget to use the chat. If you have anything you would like to add as well, especially if you're already using SciNote, please do. Happy to see those discussions. Okay. Next thing. So the next challenge, which was more common last time. So more of our attendees answered that this is something that's an issue. but we're gonna still, so that's why we're gonna cover it, but it's still gonna cover some important things in SciNote that you should be aware of. So the way SciNote was designed is that linking inventories and experimental data should be straightforward. So there's an easy way of connecting this, and I'll show this on a few features. So the first thing, so what you see here is a few screenshots. So the most important one in the backend, we have the ELN part of SciNote, right? So you have a experiment, actually a task, contact plate sampling, and then what you have on the right side, you can actually see that I can assign from many different inventories that I created. So everything from lab equipment, reagents, chemicals, solvents, tumor tissues. So if there is an inventory that where you need to track something, you can have those created, and then you can connect those to your experimental data. And what happens here is you can see that now this is a screenshot from my inventory, and the specific item now carries this information forever that it was used on this contact plate sampling, and it has a timestamp, and you always know who used it, when they used it, and then also you can see in the experimental records why they used it as well. So very important that this information does not get lost, and it really creates this long-term traceability. Good. So the next thing. So in the previous slide, we were on the experimental data, but now what you can also do, this can also be done directly from the inventories, right? You can also assign different samples or anything else directly to your experimental data from the inventories as well. So you have these options. In the bottom side, you're going to see assign to task, and then you can assign these items. So it works both ways. You can either be in the ELN and assign those items and samples, or you can be in the inventories and assign those specific samples to that experimental record. Okay, so this is very relevant in different use cases. So when you're using SciNote ELN and inventories together, you can actually create items as an output directly on the experiment, on the task. And what this allows you to do, if you're manufacturing any internal buffers, reagents, if you're doing anything internally, it could also be, I don't know, let's say you're a medical devices company and you're actually manufacturing some devices, you can also have these items created as an output and created directly in the inventories from the ELN part. So this comes important also. Let's say you're doing aliquots or anything else. So you have an output, you can create those, and you're going to create those records in the inventories. Next thing, so after you create those items, what also you can do, and this is available. So on this right side, you can see we call this the item card, and this is actually what carries all the information for a specific item, for a specific sample. And there is a block here under relationships. So let's say you were creating aliquots, you can now create parent and children relationships, or if you're doing anything, I don't know, cell lines, you can always trace back where a specific sample came from. So was it an output from a experiment? Was it, and what item it came from, right? So what the parent is. Again, seamlessly done on the ELN part, connected with the inventories, but most importantly, and this goes back to the compliance question as well, you can always trace back and see what was done, when it was done, who did it, what was the parent, so what was actually happening. Okay, and lastly, so this is something we released recently. It's not inventories, it's not ELN, it's actually an SOP library, so protocol templates. Protocol templates now also have item templates. Let's say you're doing one SOP, but it always has actually the same items. You can have those created in the library, assign those to your ELN, execute them, and then if something changes, right? Because sometimes maybe you're not going to be executing all the steps and you're not going to be using up all the reagents. Of course, you can also know that, and you can also remove that when you're executing. But what is important is it's going to save you time with templating, because you can predefine the inventory items for a protocol, and then the users will automatically see this, and then so if changes are needed, do this on the ELN part.
Yeah, maybe just to mention, so this was actually a suggestion from a lot of our customers. So we obviously accept suggestions, and they have said that, when they are repeating the protocol, they want to have the same items, let's say the same reagents assigned. And this way it allows them that they don't need to, every time they are on the protocol, assign them. And again, it comes back to efficiency and time saving.
Thank you. Good. Keeping inventories up to date. So this one is tricky. I know a lot of you answered that this is a big challenge, and both today and the previous webinar. But I think it's very connected to all the challenges, all the other challenges. So both keeping stock, tracking consumption, being compliant, sharing inventories. So keeping inventories, I think it's an umbrella term. It covers all of these. So what we already discussed earlier under the stock management part, that's also part of keeping inventories up to date, right? If you have those warning bells so that you know something has to be restocked and so forth. But here I'm going to focus on why having inventories in SciNote makes it easier to keeping it up to date, besides all the features we already covered in previous challenges. Okay, so on this GIF, what you can see is, let's say you just decided you were going to use SciNote inventories, or you decided you're going to go with SciNote and you want to use the inventories besides the ELN. The most important thing when you're having issues with inventories not being up to date is you need to have them in one place. You need to have those inventories in one system and not in different spreadsheets. And somebody's using a LIMS, somebody's using Google spreadsheet, somebody using an Excel, somebody just has this on a paper in his notebook. No, it's important that you get this set up in one system. So in this case, what you can do in SciNote is all of these CSV files and Excels can be very easily imported into SciNote. You can also use, as you can see on the screen, some predefined templates we prepared, but it's important that you create a centralized inventory. So we've seen that this is one of the bigger mistakes our prospects and customers do is they don't standardize inventories. They just, we're actually going to let that team use something else. But no, at the end of the day, it's important that you centralize your inventories. And I'm sure Blaszka would have more ideas and comments here because I talk about features, but she's the one that's actually doing the change management and talking with the customers.
Yes, so I would just mention that like keeping, the inventories up to date is challenging. Doesn't matter what kind of system you would have, if it's Excel sheet, if it's SciNote or LIMS or whatever you have. And the biggest issue here is not maybe so much technology, but it's more of change management. And you need to establish a clear and straightforward process of how you want to do things. So I would emphasize that especially during the implementation of a new system, and it really doesn't matter what kind of system you would have, it's important that you get the whole team involved and ensure that everyone understands the importance of the regular updates and that they update them as they go. So not, I'll do it, at the end of the week, but they do it at, the very time. And, we can show you how to do it. We will be happy to show you how to do it in the training sessions. We have office hours, we have support systems, but the important bit here is that it comes from within the company, within the organization. So you need to tell your team, and it needs to come from the above as well, why it's important. So they need to understand and they need to have a buy-in so that they, instill that sense of responsibility and ownership over just tracking this and why it is important. That they don't see it just as a necessary evil, but they actually do it because they understand that it will help the company.
Yeah, it's interesting. All the technology doesn't help if you don't do change management properly.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, not at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So I moved the slide what Blaszka was explaining, but yeah. So this is why I also want to show this is so these inventories. It doesn't matter if you have different teams. They should be able to find a way how to use SciNote inventories because they are very customizable. Everything you see on this screen was custom created for this specific inventory, and another team can have a completely different inventory. So it doesn't have to be the same one. They can have, but it's important that they're using the same system so that you can track and create this long-term traceability that Blaszka was also talking about now. And back to stock management. So that's what I mentioned when I started this topic. So keep in mind, keeping inventories up to date. Also, what we covered earlier, stock management is a big and important part. So stock consumption should be used to have this, to have inventories up to date. Okay, misplaced or untracked items. So this is also a tricky one. And a few things. It starts with labels. So these are examples directly from our customers who are using SciNote and printing out labels directly from SciNote. So you can create this, you can customize them. You can either use Fluix printers or Zebra printers. What you need to be aware of though is, so I know somebody asked this question at the previous webinar, and I didn't want to go into details here. So you can create custom labels, but it's not as straightforward. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to Blaszka and her team. You can also reach out to me, and we're going to take you through how you can design custom templates, because it's not as straightforward as just having this on the webinar. But you can have this information that you see here can be customized. You can see here it's very different than what you see from the default template. What it also allows you to do, again, we go back to time saving. So if you want to assign a specific item, you can use a QR code. If you want to find information about the specific item, you can scan the QR code. Okay. Second thing to be able to misplace less things is using locations. So locations allow you to know where a specific item is, right? Which rack, which refrigerator, what room, and specifically in which place, right? Is it B2? Is it A2? So where is a specific item located? Again, you can see here the top screen. You can have very different locations, and then you can have a very granulated path. So based on your specific customized location. So if you have 10 refrigerators good with different setups of shelves, yes, you can set this up.
If I can add again.
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, it's very similar to before. I am obviously, you will see, stickler for processes and for procedures and so on. But I would just really emphasize again that it's one thing how you get things missed is if you don't have a systematic approach of logging things or items in the inventory, whichever kind of inventory you would have. So you need to log it as soon as it arrives or it's moved, and you need to have a very strict procedure for check-in and check-out of the items, of the samples, whatever it is, and enforce that procedure. If not, then obviously it doesn't matter. Again, if you have the best technology in the world, it's not going to help you if you do not log it into the system, and if you do not, when that is moved or changed or something, if it's not logged again. So yeah, just wanted to mention that again.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, and I think we had this question in the chat by Gordon, and Gordon right on time, because yes, you can search the different departments. So we don't call them departments usually in SciNote. It's either workspaces or groups, but you can search for chemicals and reagents across SciNote. So if you have access permission, of course, you can find those items, even though you are not specifically in that workspace at the time. So search is an important thing, even though it sounds like it's not an inventory thing, but it's actually very important to be able to locate stuff and quickly find it. Of course, based on what we discussed earlier, you can also use QR and barcodes to get this information quicker. Okay, sharing inventories across teams. A few things here. This is not just something where it improves your ease of use so that you can share inventories, but it's also a very important thing in terms of compliance. So you can set up a very multi-tiered user access in SciNote. So you can see on the screen, you can set it by groups. So you can say that specific group has access, and then you can limit either by users or groups what kind of permissions they have. So this can be very granulated down to the specific user or a group or a department. Okay, so this one was mentioned more times today than previously. Connecting inventory to instruments and raw data. Okay, a few things. So one thing is, if I also open, okay, so already out of the box, there are some things you can do. So you can use smart annotations in SciNote to link equipment and experience results. You can upload the files into SciNote. You can also attach external data links. However, this is not automations. This is just making sure that things are in one place. What you can do is two things. So one is you can utilize our APIs. So we have customers using APIs for very different things. So making sure that, for example, and this goes to the previous point actually, but they have RFID tags on specific equipment, and then when a certain equipment leaves the room, they can actually find it, and this is real-time updated in SciNote, so they know in which room a specific item is currently, sorry, that is equipment. So they can then find it and take it back to where it's supposed to be. So RFID tags, this can be done via APIs, and then also to automated results uploads, so from different instruments and devices. And lastly, you can also we can connect some scales and some, I'm going to call them stupid devices, but those that are not connected to the internet. Um, what you can do if you have a certain scale you would like to connect, for example, just let us know. There's a middleware that you would need to purchase, but it does allow you to then send this information into SciNote. Good. Okay, this is something new. It's gonna come out in a few weeks, months. So I'm not gonna say the exact date because product team will be mad at me. But it's already in the development pipeline. So we are working on equipment booking and reservation. So there's going to be a calendar, and this is a screenshot. It's not, as you can see in the bottom right side, not the final interface, but this is a direction we're going into. So you're going to be able to have calibration dates and then also booking of devices. Let's say you have a certain device that people book for 2 or 3 days. Yes, you're going to be able to do that, and you're going to see this information in the calendar. And all of this, again, will be timestamped, time tracked, so you're going to be able to find this information. Okay, moving to the next challenge, the last challenge actually. So meeting audit and compliance requirements. This one, I guess, is like insurance. It's not important until it is, until somebody comes in and says, "Hey, are you actually doing things in a compliant way? Can you show me the audits?" But it's very important that you are using. That's why it's important to use a tool like SciNote because it does allow you and makes your work be more compliant, easier. And the things that you can utilize. So first one, and I talked about this a lot today. So permissions. You can set up very strict permissions, and this way you can make sure that people are not editing what they're not supposed to be editing. We can create custom roles if needed. So if you want to just have a role that's specifically for somebody, you can create that as well. It's not that out of the box, but also all of the information. So metadata is being timestamped. Whatever you do with a specific sample, you know what's being done, you know who did it, when they did it. So when a certain auditor comes in, or if you need to be compliant, you can always provide proof what was done, and just making sure that nothing was tampered with, the data that shouldn't be tampered with. And lastly, also, as you can see on the screenshot on the right side, preventing data loss, right, by archiving instead of deleting. The next screenshot includes audit trails. So all of our plans in SciNote do have audit trails. And audit trails, as you can see, for example, on this specific use case, I can see that this specific item was actually, the stock was deducted from 9 to 6 because somebody used it. So this metadata is there, and you can always find and use this information if needed. Okay, so what we're going to do now, so Blaszko will do a quick summary and take home messages that we would like you to go home with. We started with an overview of the previous webinar, and then I went through all the features based on the challenges you mentioned. So tracking stock, making sure inventories are up to date, sharing inventories across teams, making sure you're compliant, and connecting inventories with instruments and raw data. So there are different features. They solve different challenges, but just so you're aware, they are in SciNote and you can use them. I'm gonna give Blaszka the microphone to do the final words, and then we're gonna kick off and open the floor for a Q&A session.
Yes, so main take-home messages that are same as the last time, and we would like to emphasize them again, is that inventory is more than just items, it's the people organizing the lab. So what do we mean by that is, remember that behind every well-organized lab, there is dedicated team of people that are managing and monitoring that inventory. And one of the biggest hurdles that we are seeing is how people are embracing the new system. So it's very important that you get the whole team involved. We are offering trainings. We are offering that support system for you. So make sure you get confident with whichever new system you decide to go with. Second thing is management matters. So assign a responsibility, but ensure the whole team follows the rules. So as I already mentioned, so the most effective teams are the teams with strong leaderships. So making sure that responsibilities are assigned clearly and that everyone knows their role. But even more important is that there are protocols that are clear, straightforward, and that everyone is following the same standardized processes. Then it's choose solution people will actually use, simple, intuitive, and that it saves time. So from my side of the, where I'm obviously dealing with the customers, and a lot of times I see, that there is a problem with user adoption because sometimes, decision makers are making, decision for something without involving other users. So when you are selecting whichever solution, please do involve, people that will actually be using, let's say in this case, inventories, and it follows that usually those people will be looking for something that is user friendly, will be looking for something that will be time efficient for them, and it will seamlessly integrate into their daily routine. And the last but not least, focus on the real benefits. So flexibility and adoption are more important than bells and whistles. So when you are evaluating, I would also give you a tip to try and write down every need that you have. What are you actually looking for in solution? So not to be, impressed by a long list of all the features and, hype, let's say, behind the AI right now and so on. Make sure that you are looking for something that will really be worth it for you. So prioritize the solution that you can adapt to your lab, and embrace that over some superficial enhancements.
Oh, you put it really well. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. All from my side. So also keep in mind, we are here to help with all of this, right? So Blaszka and her team, they're the ones that also help you with the change management. They're going to be there to help you do the trainings, to help you with what we see helps and works with getting people to change and adopt new software. So we are here to help you, but it's important to understand it's a big part of a new solution.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what I'm gonna go to the next slide and open the floor to questions. There were some during the webinar already. So one came from Ayor. So how to use consumption option? So consumption option can be enabled. So it's only available in the second and third plan. The basic one doesn't have it. So I'm not sure, Mayor, if you are a essential user or a professional one. What I suggest is reach out to us, reach out to your customer success manager, and we're gonna make sure to check out. Maybe you already have it and you don't use it, then it's gonna be easy. If not, we can talk about what that means.
We can also give you a trial.
Yeah, of course.
And you can check it out and see if it works for you. And then we can talk about that.
No, yeah, of course. Okay, then question from Andy. I have a quick question regarding parent-child relationships on SciNote. We have bulk material that we aliquote for easier use. Is there a way to deduct from the parent to the child?
To deduct?
From the parent to the child. So can you see, because I'm also need to wrap my head. So you're doing early quotes, and then you want to make sure. Yeah, no, when you're executing, so just to make sure if I understood correctly, and Blaszka, please jump in.
Yeah.
So you're going to be executing a certain SOP so that where you get from a bulk material early quotes, you would do this on the task. So you would execute an SOP and then deduct the numbers from the inventory. So the stock that you would create would actually be number of I don't know what kind of material you're deducting from, but yes, you can create custom unit and then deduct that custom unit, so you're gonna know. I think that's
Yeah, but we can also maybe follow up later to see exactly your use case and see how we can help.
Yeah, Maddie, we're gonna also follow up with you and make sure that the answer was the correct one. Let's check if there are any other questions. Just a second, I need to open this. Okay, so just a second. Where do I have it? Where is the Q&A session? Okay, there are a lot less questions this time than the previous one. No, actually, let me see. Okay, we covered, maybe that was a good webinar, or I hope that's a good sign. Or did we miss any of the questions?
I'm just looking at them.
No, so, okay. We have a question from Brazil. Okay, is there any integration with this system in a lab, LEIS system can help you track inventory in real time? I mean, we did this in the past, custom for our customers, so there is none out of the box. So Branson, what I suggest you, please reach out to us. Let's write down the requirements, so prepare an SOV, and then see how this can be done. But yes, we do have customers doing that, but it's as I said, so it's not out of the box. There is some custom work that needs to be done via and through our APIs. But that's something I completely agree that saves time. That saves a lot of time. How to use net stock in these consumption options. So Mayur, as I mentioned earlier, so please, we're gonna follow up with you and make sure what exactly you're using, so what type of SciNote, and let you know how you can enable stock and then track consumption. So we have a question about AI implementation. Okay, so AI implementation. So this is not so connected to inventories, but we are tackling it slower than because we want to be smart about it. So we see a lot of AI tools out there that are just, I'm going to call them gimmicks, but they don't really offer any real life value. They just sound great, as Bashko said earlier, so bells and whistles, but they are not actually bringing in value. So the way we are currently going about it, so one is already import with AI, so where you can create PDF, so importing PDFs into SciNote format. So let's say you have a protocol in a PDF, you can do it with a few prompts and get it into SciNote. Then we're working on I'm going to call it assistant, but I'm sure somebody from the product team will be mad at me. But it's going to be some sort of chat where you're going to be able to create stuff in SciNote quicker instead of clicking on buttons, but actually talking with AI that's going to help you design that specific experiment and protocol. So that's the direction we're currently taking. We are still looking into how specifically do it with inventories, but most likely something in terms of trends is what will come down the line.
Carlos, could you maybe mention how would you like to see that we have any kind of AI features or functionalities? What would you want to see in ELN inventory?
Yeah, sure. Carlos, you can also send me an email. So we just talked recently, but you can send me an email. So Blaszka asked you if you can explore and elaborate a bit. Dario Pereira, can you create a location for cabinets similar to the freezer sample location? Yes. What I showed you earlier, this can be customized. So if you have cabinets with different shelves, different boxes, with different number of places in the box, yes, you can create those and they can be customized based on your specific design.
Yes.
Okay, Maddie came back with, we like the bulk repeated parent. Yes. So you would have the stock would include, okay, so we created 20 alley quotes, and then when you would be using those up, you would actually, the stock would be, for example, the unit would be alley quote, and you would be deducting the alley quotes. And again, you would be able to set up a threshold when somebody would get notified, hey, we need to do the alley quotes again. Good. So there are a few other questions coming in, but we're gonna finish off for today and answer those two questions in the follow-up emails. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Keep in mind, as I said in the beginning, this is the second webinar in a three-part series, and the third one will include one of our customers. So we're gonna try to go through a real-life use case to see how one of our customers is using it and what they set up and where they are saving time. Thank you, Blasha, for helping me and joining me. I really appreciated it, and everyone for joining us today. And see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.